Universe 6's most valuable fighter hit now gone from the Tournament of Power, Universe 6 is seemingly at a struggle as Cabba finds himself in a very tough spot and having to fight for his very own survival, but not without having Universe 7's Vegeta aid Cabba in saving him from sheer disaster, all while Gohan and Piccolo team together in order to battle against Universe 6's Namekians. But all the way out in the distance, Frieza has his eyes set and locked on the Universe 6's Saiyan Cabba as Frieza looks to strike, setting up a moment to where it's either going to make or break Cabba. What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome to my Dragon Ball Super episode 112 breakdown review entitled A Saiyan's Vow, Vegeta's Resolution, leading into next week's exciting episode of Dragon Ball Super episode 113, which sets up the battle between Super Saiyan 2 KAULIFLA and of course Super Saiyan Goku, as somehow Goku is able to maintain enough energy to transform into a Super Saiyan and battling against a Super Saiyan 2 KAULIFLA. But Dragon Ball Super episode 111 showcased a few interesting things. Number one, the debut of Super Saiyan 2 Cabba, which I think was essential, especially for his character, considering the fact that Cabba was the first ever Saiyan introduced from Universe 6 and having to battle against Vegeta back during the Champa arc, and Vegeta having to remind Cabba what Saiyan pride is, essentially having to get stronger, that perhaps maybe even one day he could even surpass Vegeta himself. But here we get to see a different outcome occur, to where Vegeta even spoke to Cabba about how disappointed he was in Cabba not being able to introduce Vegeta to the king of Planet Sadal, alongside becoming essentially a crash test dummy to Universe 3's Mona, who in my personal opinion, I don't think she should have been able to even withstand Cabba throughout the duration of their battle. But of course, by the end of it, Cabba did get the elimination on Mona, but not without having to be beat up mostly during this entire fight, which again, I don't understand in my personal opinion, nor do I agree with the way they treated Cabba in this episode. They're giving more of the spotlight towards Khalifa and KALE, and a lot of people don't like them because, number one, their character growth has been very stale. We don't know too much about them, nor has their character developed at all, aside from seeing KALE and Khalifa's power. But ultimately what I think separates them from Cabba is Cabba is a bit well known in having to fight for the elite force of his planet and actually standing up for something, where as opposed to Khalifa is just like Goku in a way, where she just wants to fight strong people. And KALE, she pretty much has no development at all in having to follow in Khalifa's footsteps. So for me, to see Mona be wrung out by Cabba was a good thing. To see Cabba finally achieve Super Saiyan 2 was a good thing. I didn't really have a problem with Cabba achieving Super Saiyan 2, because think about this, if KAULIFLA can achieve Super Saiyan 2, then why can't Cabba? It was only a matter of time before at least they had given Cabba Super Saiyan 2, which we all know at this very point isn't anything meaningful in comparison to Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan God, or Super Saiyan Blue, but it is a vital transformation to have, as we saw Super Saiyan 2 more often in the anime than Super Saiyan 3. However, I disagreed with having Cabba be wrung out in the exact same episode, because I did agree, although seeing Frieza wring out Cabba in his golden form, I just disagreed with having to see Cabba essentially do nothing aside from showcasing his talent early on in the tournament by eliminating two fighters via one single kick, and of course eliminating Mona. So I did not understand as to why they had to wring out Cabba so early. I love the overall development and the relationship between Cabba and Vegeta. That was good in the episode. However, I disagreed with the concept of Vegeta helping out an enemy as opposed to helping Goku with the Spirit Bomb when he needed it most. I understand that it's Vegeta's pride, and among all the teammates that Goku has, Vegeta is the most prideful, so that makes sense. But essentially enough having to remind Cabba who he is was great, but the only thing that was flawed in my opinion in seeing this was the idea that Frieza had the balls to do what Vegeta couldn't, and that was actually wring out Cabba, especially later on after he told Cabba that if he wins, when he wins, he will use the Super Dragon Balls to revive him. So then from there, I didn't see why we couldn't even get Vegeta versus Cabba, given the fact that if he hinted that despite what happens, he will use the Dragon Balls to revive Cabba, that could have been a perfect setup to see Vegeta fight Cabba, and more or less teaching him just as he taught him during the Champa arc, which I thought was very essential during that point because Cabba didn't really know what a Super Saiyan was, and Vegeta having to step by step train him and threatening him and trying to get Cabba to be a bit more explosive, as we saw here with Mona. But instead, by the end of it, we saw how Super Saiyan 2 Cabba, given in the first episode, was ultimately used as another crash test dummy for a more superior character that happened to be Frieza, which again, I didn't really have an issue with, although I felt as if Cabba's Super Saiyan 2 transformation was a bit dull, because when he first achieved it, it's not as meaningful in my opinion as we first saw Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, as we saw various different transformations before. However, during the time being, it was what was needed to get Cabba's character over. However, I also truly did like and appreciate the development for Frieza, because Frieza at this given point didn't just come at Cabba in trying to fight him aggressively. He actually welcomed Cabba in the idea that he wanted to fight Cabba in a very graceful way. So I feel as if, in my opinion, it was well needed to see how this episode was mainly character driven, only to see Cabba's character fall by the very end and having to give him a new transformation and having to give him somewhat of a slight chance of hope, ultimately enough just to be wrung out by Golden Frieza, which I agreed with, because I would much rather have Cabba be wrung out by Frieza instead of someone like Mona or even Brienne, which we did not see in this episode, which I thought was great. But by the long run, I do think that there was no point in giving Cabba Super Saiyan 2, because they gave him Super Saiyan 2 just to wring out one enemy and essentially getting squashed by a superior fighter as the tournament dragged on. But I did appreciate how we did get to see Vegeta and Toppo engage, which is ultimately going to set itself up for a high caliber like match, which I cannot wait for. However, I disagreed and I did not like how Mona was able to be on a comparative level to a Super Saiyan Cabba. Super Saiyan Cabba during the Champa arc actually gave Vegeta a little bit of trouble, as Vegeta wasn't even fazed by Cabba but more or less playing along. But needless to say, Vegeta during that time was a bit taken back by Super Saiyan Cabba, whereas here we see how Mona was able to effortlessly take on a Super Saiyan Cabba with no problem whatsoever. And I disagree with this concept, considering the fact that you have to build up fighters that are on a higher tier than regular Super Saiyans are. But my only gripe was seeing how they pretty much did nothing with the overall development of Cabba's character. But nonetheless, the episode pretty much focused, in the beginning at least, with all the gods, all the other fighters that were wrung out, seemingly enough having to be very quiet. And it was very ominous because we see Jiren, he's meditating, he's sitting there, and Goku's very angry about this because Jiren deemed everyone else in this tournament not worthy of fighting him. So we see how the Universe 3 characters get more involved in taking on Goku, as there is rumors going around that the new Super Warrior might actually end up being the Universe 3 fighters, which again remains to be seen. But early on, as Goku fought the other fighters, I agreed in having Goku get beat down, because you don't want to showcase Goku having to take on other fighters, especially after having to go through what he went through with Jiren and still having the energy to survive and fight other people. But then again, going into next week's episode, we see how he's able to hang in there with Khalifa. Now, this kind of goes back to when Goku first fought Hit as a Super Saiyan Blue, Kaioken times 10. It took Goku literally days, perhaps weeks and months, to adjust back to his normal self. If you guys remember back, he wasn't able to fly correctly, he wasn't able to transform. King Kai was even saying that Goku severely damaged his body. Now here, we see him casually going along. He is kind of on the defensive side, he is holding his own, but I disagree with the concept of Goku having to fight so early, especially next week, considering the fact that Khalifa saved Goku from the Universe 3 fighters, which again, you have to ask yourself as to why, because in a tournament-like setting, if your universe is on the line, why would you even bother in trying to help someone else out when you know that your universe is in jeopardy? So hashtag RIP Universe 6. Now, what's scary about this, and I will do a video about this going into the week, is the fact that it is highly possible that someone like Khalifa could actually get Super Saiyan 3 sometime during this arc. Now, whether you guys agree or disagree with that concept is entirely up to you, but it was foreshadowed by Goku when they first fought, that Goku said that if she keeps this up, if she continues to act the way she acts and fights the way she fights, she could even possibly reach Super Saiyan 3. So with this having to be said, we understand based on spoilers and the episode preview that Goku is, as of course based on visuals, only using Super Saiyan, whereas opposed to Khalifa maybe using Super Saiyan 2. We saw by the end of the episode how she had electricity all around her, so assumingly enough she does have and is using Super Saiyan 2 to fight Goku. But the question is, what does Goku do that causes Khalifa to summon KALE to help join the fight as well? Because that again is an entire mystery in and of itself, because we don't know as to what KALE's involvement's going to be, because we understand the last time we saw her, she was able to momentarily control her power and pretty much being a bit more stable than how she was the first time. But nonetheless, this all points to the idea that the Universe 6 Saiyans, that having to be Khalifa and KALE, are going to be one of the main focuses for that universe. And to an extent, I disagree, because they should have had at least Cabba fit one of those roles. But also what disappointed me, but also kind of excited me at the same time, was seeing the Universe 6 Namekians fight Piccolo and Gohan. Now, the Universe 6 Namekians were in fact formidable, as they did give Gohan and Piccolo a really good fight, especially as a tag team. And I firmly believe that as individuals, they're not going to last. However, as a duo, they remind me a lot of, Zamasu and Goku Black, to a degree where they don't leave each other's side. And what was disappointing about this is we didn't get to see enough of Piccolo, Gohan, and the Namekians, because let's face facts here, I mean, they're not really doing anything at all. We saw them clash momentarily, but also you have to ask yourself, what in the world are the androids doing? What is up with Android 18? What is up with Android 17, especially Android 17, who is a high tier, high caliber like fighter? We saw how he was able to be relative to Super Saiyan Blue Goku during that one episode, but now it's like he hasn't even been showcased since he fought against some of the Universe 4 fighters and whatnot. So for me at least, I personally believe that the androids ought to be more involved. I'm not trying to say stick everybody in one episode and have them all go all out, but again, seeing the way the manga portrayal handles certain characters like Toppo and Goku, it begs the question as to what they're going to be doing in the manga adaptation. But for me, this episode was good from a narrative to where they focused on Vegeta's relationship with Cabba and having to teach him a lesson and reminding him about what it means to be a Saiyan. And I personally loved how he referenced the king of planet Sadal and having to introduce him and whatnot, because that may foreshadow us going into another arc one day, with us possibly going to Universe 6 and meeting the Saiyans from over there, because again, we don't have any information as to how they conduct themselves, who they are, essentially where they stem from. But I do think that in some way, shape, or form, they kind of foreshadowed this idea that we may actually see something involving the Universe 6 Saiyans and whatnot. But I love the overall connection of this. I agreed with Cabba getting Super Saiyan 2. I just disagreed with him having to lose so quickly and getting fodderized. I loved how Frieza was the one that wrung him out, because Frieza, having to be the manipulative, sadistic, narcissistic bastard that he is, I think that it fit the narrative of Frieza wringing him out, because again, Frieza did control and kill the Saiyans at some point. So seeing that, I think, was pretty cool. Going into next week's episode, guys, I will talk more of that in my prediction video, as I do firmly believe that as we transition from Cabba into Khalifa and KALE, I do think that those girls might be one of the last ones remaining for Team Universe 6. By the end of it, I'll be honest, I don't think Team Universe 6 is going to last very long, unless of course they give one of the females a significant jump in power to where they become relative to Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan God, or Super Saiyan Blue. But post your comments down below, guys. What are your overall thoughts on this episode? Did you guys like it? Did you guys hate it? Well, I mean, what were some of your flaws? If you guys had to agree or disagree with one concept, what would that be? Let me know your thoughts down below, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching. If you guys are new to this channel, don't forget to go on ahead and punch that subscribe button, guys, for more awesome videos such as this. And of course, if you guys haven't already, be sure to go on ahead and enable all notifications. That way you guys can be notified whenever a video is posted onto this channel and dropped into your sub box. Hashtag Dragon Ball Squad. Tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.